What we're going to do tonight, so this may not take a half an hour, you may get out of here slightly early. What we're going to do tonight, because last week we talked about kind of the pieces of systematic theology. Today we're going to take an attribute of the divine, of God, and we're going to build a systematic theology around that attribute. Okay? And we're going to see what that looks like. And then if we're still interested and have time, we may take a second one and see what difference there is when we do that. So, tell me something we know about God. We did love last week, so pick something else. God is...
I'd say wisdom.
Okay, God is wise, God is all-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take that.
Okay.
God is all-knowing. So, okay, if God is all-knowing, what can we say about the nature of God? That, other than that he's all-knowing. What else would an all-knowing God imply?
Truth?
Mm-hmm. I would think that a God who knows everything would also have to be connected in some way with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because how could you know everything without some kind of connection to it? What else could we say about an all-knowing God?
Well, there's something that has always somewhat confused me about the all-knowing part. All right? If he is all-knowing, does that also means he's all-knowing about the future?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or just all-knowing about what's happened up till now?
Ah.
Right?
So that raises a question then in our system. If God is all-knowing, is God, the formal word is extratemporal? Is God outside of time? So that God looks at time kind of the way we look at a comic strip, that you can see
The future.
all of it.
Right.
Or is God all-knowing only within the temporal context? So that's a question.
It is a question that I don't know the answer to, because then you get into predestination and all that other stuff too.
Well, yes.
But isn't that what wisdom does? I mean, it kind of gives you that foresight.
That if you are wise, you are more able to predict what might happen than...
I don't even think you predict it. I think it's there. It's a given. It's due to experience, which God is, if he's all-knowing, has
all the experience.
all that knowledge and experience. I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting. The church has said that God existed before time and will exist forever. But that doesn't really answer the
No,
extratemporal question.
that's correct.
And it does.
Well, I don't know if there is any.
No, there may not be. No, that's okay. But it does raise the predestination question.
Absolutely.
If God knows how the future, did God determine the future? And is there an objective difference?
And then what happens to free choice and all that?
Mm-hmm. And free will and all of that. Mm-hmm. So, or my friends who are further into quantum physics than I got says that with every choice we make, we generate a new universe.
A new universe.
So does God just know what all of the possible choices might end up? Like looking at a decision tree?
Mm-hmm.
Does God look at this ultimate decision tree and know that if we make this choice, it will do this?
Sure, sure.
Which is a way to get around an extratemporal God without building in predestination. Of course, you can build in an extratemporal God with predestination, which is what the Presbyterians do. They just say that God is outside of time, God knows what you're going to choose before you choose it, and God has determined what it is before you make the choice. So ultimately, you can't really you think you have free will, but you really don't, because...
Is God DNA? And gene.
Is God DNA?
That kind of predisposes your future, to an extent.
Mm-hmm. And, we talk about systems having DNA, too, that predispose them to certain things. So, Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thought.
I did warn you about theology. It will blow your mind if you
yeah,
spend enough time thinking about this. All right, so we have some answers and some questions about the nature of God in our system where the fundamental thing we know about God is that God is all-knowing. What about revelation? How does an all-knowing God make himself known?
I'd love to connect that to happiness and
So through emotion, maybe?
through how he makes himself known to you as a human, as a being.
Revelation is all. How does God make himself known to the individual? How does God make himself known to the world? How does God make himself known at different points of time? And the piece that we're holding in the center is that God is all-knowing. So an all-knowing God would adapt, I would think, to, if God knows that people can't accept the message.
Right.
We talked about
You have
that
to
almost one of those first classes where, society changes so, and why has religion changed so, and adjusted to, what the demand is to retain a populace of Christians.
To a great degree, I think religion has changed over the years.
Of course it has.
definitely. And it seems to adjust to what people want. And is that God?
Is that God or is that humanity altering?
Right.
And would an all-knowing God reveal himself in different ways, not just at different times, but to different cultures?
And why are there so many gods or believers of different gods?
So, what else could we say?
But I think if you put all those gods or religions together, and I'm not a theologian by any way, shape, or form, I would think there's a common thread.
There are some, and there are some places you would think there are and that there aren't. One of the things Mother Teresa said in one of her writings is that her assumption was that all religions had in common an impetus to assist the other. That helping somebody in need was something that all religions had in common. She said, I believed that till I got to India. But in Hindu theology, if you are suffering, it is because you are working off something you've done. And so to interfere with someone's suffering is to place a roadblock in that person's progress towards nirvana. And so it is not a good thing to assist the suffering. It is actually an evil thing.
So suffering is because of something you've done?
Something.
It's not a test for you to get to nirvana?
Depending on whether it's something you're paying off or it's a test. It could be one or the other, but they tend to assume that if they see you suffering,
They've been evil in the past, and therefore this is your repentance, you have cancer, or whatever.
Reincarnation? Are we getting into that timeline?
Exactly.
Then like the Hopi Indian believes in different worlds where you are here to experience that no matter what that is to go on to the next world. So there must be, again, some common thread there of God gave you a path.
But so, in Christian worldview, we would say, if the path you're on has suffering in the way, it is our responsibility as followers of God to alleviate that, to attempt to smooth your path. That is our... Right. The Hindu says, no. It is not my responsibility to smooth your path. As a matter of fact, it is my responsibility to stay out of your way. So that you...
And look at Christ saying, why hast thou forsaken me?
Right.
As he suffered.
So, yes, and the church has moved back and forth on that, whether suffering draws you closer to God and therefore is
some flagellation and all
yes,
that.
Exactly.
I think suffering does do that.
But
makes you human. I don't think if you didn't feel that, I don't think you'd be human. It gives you conscience. It gives you.
You mean pain makes you makes you human?
I think it does. I think.
Well, certainly participating in the creative process, which is one of the things that makes us unique, is that we as human beings get to participate in the process of creation, brings, if not suffering, frustration. But, yeah. So the distinction between self-flagellation, of course, and external suffering is that self-flagellation is supposedly self-inflicted.
Well, of course.
As opposed to inflicted by others. So there's some other questions. I didn't promise you answers.
Oh, it goes on and on.
It goes on and spins out, as you can see. So again, let's get back to our God is all-knowing. What does that tell us about creation?